Welcome to tonight's journey. Imagine a universe where the fate of billions rests on a single desert world, Arrakis, also called Dune, a planet of endless sands, scorching days and freezing nights, where water is more precious than gold and a single grain of spice can shift the destiny of empires. Tonight we step into this world of paradox, a hostile wasteland that sustains an entire imperium. Whether you're listening in the quiet of your room or working late beneath the glow of a screen, let these words carry you into the heart of the desert, where power and survival intertwine. If you enjoy this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can follow us deeper into the cosmos. There was a time, long ago, when Arrakis was not a wasteland. Imagine a world bathed in the shimmer of endless seas, where rolling waves mirrored the light of a softer sky. Clouds gathered with the weight of rain, and winds carried the salt of oceans across fertile shores. Life flourished in rhythms familiar to countless other worlds. Yet that memory is now nothing more than a faint echo. The seas have vanished, pulled down into the hidden silence of the planet, leaving behind only an expanse of sand. Dunes rise in sweeping arcs, endless and shifting, stretching far beyond the horizon. By day, the sun strikes with a violence that scorches skin and bone. By night, the cold descends like a blade, reminding every creature that Arrakis offers no refuge, only endurance. Still, within this merciless desert lies a secret of immeasurable value. Buried beneath restless sands is melange, the spice. It is not merely dust, it glows faintly, radiant, as if it were starlight condensed into grains. To taste it is to be altered, lives lengthen, minds sharpen, awareness expands until glimpses of the future itself flicker at the edge of vision. For the Imperium, it is indispensable. Without spice, there can be no starships crossing folded space, no noble houses preserving their reign, no guild navigators steering the fragile balance of trade and power. The existence of entire galaxies bends toward what lies in this one desert world. Yet here lies the paradox. The universe depends utterly upon a planet that seems to resist life itself. Water, the essence of survival elsewhere, is scarce, hidden away by the sand trout that transformed Arrakis into an arid crucible. The desert is harsh, indifferent, relentless, and yet, from this hostility emerges the substance that sustains emperors, mystics, and dreamers. The very quality that makes Arrakis inhospitable is what makes it essential. Let your mind rest on this vision, an ocean slowly dissolving into vapor, its waves lifting into air until only sand remains, curling into mountains of gold that ripple beneath the burning sun. And in that sand, between countless grains, rests a single fleck of spice. It catches the light as though the night sky itself has shattered, scattering stars across the desert floor. One world, fragile, merciless, and unyielding, holds the fate of empires in its grasp, standing at the very center of everything. Arrakis has never been a world that welcomes those who seek to claim it. It greets newcomers with silence that is more warning than invitation, and it strips away illusions quickly, leaving only the stark truth of survival. The desert gives nothing freely. The sun presses down with merciless weight, scorching the land until stones split, and the very air feels heavy with fire. When the light falls, the heat vanishes with equal severity, and the night pours in with a cold so sharp it bites through skin and bone. This endless rhythm of burning and freezing leaves little space for comfort, reminding all who walk its sands that here nothing is guaranteed. Water, that most ordinary of substances elsewhere, becomes the holiest treasure on Arrakis. Every drop is guarded, stored, or fought over. Entire codes of conduct, entire ways of life, are built around its scarcity. To drink without thought is unthinkable. To waste it is a crime against the tribe. Arrakis teaches, with every breath, that life itself hangs by the thread of moisture clinging to one's body. And yet, it is this same unforgiving world that sustains the vast imperium. Beneath the restless dunes lies melange, the spice, an element that cannot be replicated or replaced, the single source upon which interstellar civilization depends. It is the key that allows ships to fold space, the elixir that prolongs life, the medium through which glimpses of the future are revealed. There exists no alternative. The fate of galaxies rests on a substance born from this wasteland, and so the Empire bends its will toward Arrakis, knowing that without spice, it cannot endure. The reliance is absolute. The Padishah Emperor binds his throne to the flow of spice, securing wealth and armies through the desert's yield. The noble houses of the Landsraad scheme, endlessly, measuring their influence not only by heritage, but by access to shipments of melange. The Spacing Guild maintains its monopoly over travel through navigators, whose very bodies are steeped in spice vapor, their ability to see into folded space dependent on constant exposure. Even the Bene Gesserit, in their long designs stretching across centuries, rely on spice to heighten awareness and unlock hidden paths of consciousness. Each power believes it holds dominion, yet each is held captive by the same desert it seeks to control. Arrakis is more than a planet. It is the hidden heart of the Imperium, its slow and steady beat dictating the rhythm of commerce, politics, and survival. The desert cannot be tamed, but its silence governs emperors, fleets, and dynasties alike. Palaces may glitter, and armies may rise, yet their fortunes circle back always to this one world. A wasteland, harsh and unyielding, holds the power to sustain or to undo the empire that rests upon it. The spice, melange, is the axis upon which the entire Imperium turns. At first sight, it is no more than a fine powder scattered through the sands of Arrakis, glowing faintly in the light like embers ground into dust. But its true power lies not in its appearance, but in the transformations it brings to those who consume it. Across the galaxy, from the poorest settlers to the wealthiest nobles, spice has become both necessity and obsession. For the common citizen, it is folded into food and drink in subtle measures, granting vigor, sharper senses, and years beyond what nature alone would allow. For the wealthy, who can afford steady supplies, spice brings not only extended life, but a heightened perception that deepens awareness of the present. Among the rare and the gifted, the effects grow stranger still, visions that graze the edges of time, moments of foresight that allow glimpses into what has not yet come to pass. No other substance in human history has carried such promise. Youth prolonged, consciousness expanded, destiny itself hinted at. Yet the gift is inseparable from its curse. Melange binds its users in absolute dependence. Withdrawal is not a discomfort, but a death sentence, swift and merciless. Even for those who survive its grip, the body is reshaped. Eyes turn the unmistakable, deep blue of spice saturation, a sign that cannot be hidden. In others, mutations go further, altering the form until humanity itself seems blurred. The guild navigators, whose existence in vast spice tanks enables interstellar travel, have surrendered their very bodies to the substance, becoming something both greater and less than human. Beyond the personal, melange carries an economic weight greater than any other commodity. It is the hidden currency of the Imperium, exchanged not only in markets, but in whispered agreements and secret bargains. Its value surpasses metals, fuels, or drugs combined, for its absence would bring civilization to a halt. A single shipment can tilt the fortunes of houses, buy the loyalty of armies, or determine the outcome of wars. From the simplest Fremen loaf, baked with spice, to the elaborate feasts of dukes, where it perfumes wines and delicacies, to the guarded vaults of the guild, where it sustains visions of space, melange threads itself through every stratum of life. Thus spice is at once miracle and prison. It offers life, clarity, and foresight, yet demands submission, reshaping both body and empire around its hold. Every dynasty, every navigator, every dreamer breathes under its shadow. To command the spice is to command the universe, but to need the spice is to be forever enslaved by the desert that alone can produce it. The mystery of melange cannot be separated from the desert that gives birth to it. Arrakis is not merely a setting, but a living system bound together by creatures and cycles that no human hand controls. Every particle of spice that drifts across the dunes is the result of processes vast, hidden, and perilous. At the beginning of this cycle is the sand trout, a small, leathery organism that moves beneath the surface in search of water. To humans, they appear insignificant, yet their role is absolute. They seize every drop they find, encasing it within their bodies, sealing it away until the surface becomes utterly dry. It was through their endless labor that Arrakis lost its oceans, transformed into a world of sand and heat. What might seem an act of destruction is in truth a preparation, shaping the desert for the creatures that follow. When sand trout encounter water they cannot contain, they die in the attempt, merging into strange underground pockets called pre-spice masses. For a time, these masses swell unseen, fermenting beneath the dunes. Then, with sudden violence, the desert convulses. The pre-spice erupts in a spice blow, blasting clouds of gas and flame into the air, spreading the raw material that will dry into melange upon the sands. What is catastrophe for travelers caught nearby is renewal for the desert itself, the moment when spice is born anew. From this cycle comes the most fearsome inhabitant of Arrakis, the sandworm, or Shai-Hulud. Vast beyond comprehension, some stretching for kilometers, these worms are both guardians and makers of the spice. Their lives are intertwined with every stage of the cycle, consuming plankton, shaping the sands, and ensuring that melange continues to appear. To the Fremen, they are not merely animals, but gods of the desert, symbols of power and eternity. To the Imperium, they are the ever-present danger that haunts every attempt to harvest spice. Machinery and men alike tremble when the ground begins to thrum with their approach. At the heart of this cycle lies a paradox, crueler than politics. For humans, water is life. For sandworms, water is death. Should Arrakis ever bloom again with rivers and seas, the worms would perish, and with them the spice. Thus the universe depends upon the desert remaining inhospitable, its harshness preserved to guarantee survival on a galactic scale. The ecosystem of Arrakis is a closed loop, complete in itself. Humanity stands at its edges, intruders who harvest but do not command. The spice is not simply a resource, it is the breath of a living desert, given on its own terms, reminding all who seek it that power begins and ends with the sands. The Imperium spans millions of worlds, yet its essence is not modern, not mechanical, not even progressive in the way one might expect of a galactic empire. Instead, it is bound to traditions that echo the feudal past of humanity. Across the stars stand dynasties rather than governments, lords and nobles rather than elected councils, houses that rule planets as if they were castles set adrift in space. In the absence of machines that think, authority has fallen back into human hands, and power has crystallized into forms as old as history itself. At its peak sits the Padisha Emperor, enthroned as supreme sovereign. His claim to power rests not only on the wealth he draws from Arrakis, but also on the fearsome Sardaukar legions he commands. Soldiers bred in brutality, loyal only to him, their presence a constant reminder that the throne is never to be challenged lightly. Yet the Emperor's hand does not fall unchecked. Around him gathers the Landsraad, the council of noble houses, each one powerful in its own right. Some rule single planets, others entire systems, but together they serve as a counterweight, reminding the Emperor that his strength cannot stand alone. Their rivalries and alliances create a constant, shifting balance, fragile but enduring. The third pillar is the Spacing Guild, more indispensable than any army or throne. With its monopoly on interstellar travel, the Guild holds the arteries of the galaxy in its grasp. Its navigators, forever transformed by immersion in spice, guide ships safely through folded space, their prescient visions replacing machines forbidden since the Butlerian Jihad. No empire can move, no house can trade, without the guild's consent. In their silence lies absolute leverage, for to anger them is to be cut off from the stars. And behind these three great powers moves another, cloaked and unacknowledged, the Bene Gesserit. They weave themselves into the fabric of society, not through armies or fleets, but through patience and design. For centuries they have cultivated bloodlines, shaping futures with their breeding program, whispering in courts, planting faiths and prophecies where they are needed. Their strength is not in open rule, but in influence, so subtle it becomes invisible, steering the course of humanity, one generation at a time. This is the Imperium, a tripod of power balanced precariously upon spice. Each faction believes it holds dominion, yet all are bound together by dependence on Arrakis. Palaces glitter and fleets rise, but their survival is no more secure than the desert winds. Beneath the grandeur lies stasis, a system unable to evolve beyond its reliance, a galaxy vast in scope, yet fragile in its foundation. A galaxy so vast, yet balanced on a single grain of sand. The Imperium presents itself as eternal, its fleets crossing the stars, its noble houses weaving webs of intrigue, its emperor enthroned with armies at his command. On the surface it appears immovable, a civilization rooted in power and tradition. But beneath this display of strength lies a truth far more fragile. The entire edifice depends on Arrakis, and Arrakis must remain exactly what it is, a desert stripped of mercy. Only in its dryness, only in its hostility, can the sandworms survive, and only through them does the spice come into being. Yet in the hidden caves of the sea urchins, the Fremen nurture a vision that stands in direct opposition to the Empire's needs. For generations they have gathered water in vast reservoirs, drop by drop, preparing for the day when the desert might bloom again. To them, survival is not enough. They dream of renewal, of a green Arrakis, where rivers flow and children grow beneath the shade of trees. But the paradox cannot be denied. Water, the element that would give life to humans, brings death to the sandworm. Should the Fremen succeed, the creatures that produce melange will vanish, and with them the spice itself. The consequences are beyond imagining. Without spice, the navigators of the Spacing Guild cannot see into folded space, and interstellar travel ceases. Without spice, the Emperor loses his wealth and his grip on power. The noble houses, deprived of the substance that extends their years and sustains their influence, collapse into irrelevance. The Bene Gesserit, their designs entwined with spice-born visions, find their schemes unraveling. In the absence of melange, the Imperium disintegrates, stripped of the very force that holds it together. Thus the galaxy, resplendent in its palaces and its armies, is revealed to be precarious. An empire whose foundations are no firmer than the dunes of Arrakis. A sandstorm can shift a landscape overnight. So too could the loss of spice shift the fate of civilization. The desert itself seems to whisper this truth. Stability is illusion, permanence is a dream, and all power rests upon the shifting will of the sands. When an empire depends upon a hostile world, there can be no lasting certainty. Every grain of sand becomes a reminder that even the greatest of systems can crumble. This is the final paradox of Arrakis, the lesson that beneath all grandeur lies fragility, and that the balance between human ambition, nature's design, and the hunger for power is as delicate as the desert wind. Open your imagination and allow it to drift backwards, further and further, until you arrive at an Arrakis that no one alive today could recognize. Long before the dunes rose into mountains of sand, before the winds carried only dust and heat, there were oceans. They stretched across the horizon like sheets of glass, reflecting skies softened by clouds and shadowed by storms. The air was heavy with moisture, rich with the scent of salt, and rains fell in slow, patient rhythms, that nourished plains and valleys. On this world, life flourished freely. Rivers traced winding paths across the land, seas rolled endlessly against rocky cliffs, and entire ecosystems grew without fear of drought. Arrakis was not yet Dune. It was a world where abundance seemed as natural as breath. But change arrived, not through the steady rhythm of climate or the natural cycles of a planet, but through a living agent, invasive and relentless, the sand trout. At first, they were small, leathery creatures, unnoticed against the tapestry of life. Yet their purpose was singular, and their influence beyond imagining. Wherever they moved, they sought water. They wrapped themselves around it, sealed it off, carried it down into hidden caverns where it could no longer rise to the surface. It was not hunger in the way of animals, nor balance in the way of ecosystems. It was transformation, biological design, written into their very existence. One drop at a time, one river at a time, the sand trout changed Arrakis. Oceans that had once rolled beneath storms shrank and withdrew, pulled silently into underground vaults. Lakes dried to cracked basins, their beds slowly covered by shifting sand. The air grew thin of moisture, rains grew sparse, then ceased altogether. Where once the climate had been temperate, it grew hostile. Temperatures soared under the open sun, climbing so high that even stone fractured. When darkness fell, the warmth vanished as swiftly as it had come, leaving the nights bitter and cutting. Seasons flattened into extremes. Arrakis was not evolving, it was being remade. For the creatures that already lived there, this change was catastrophic. Species that had thrived in water dwindled and disappeared. Green growth receded until it clung only to hidden corners, then to none at all. The sand trout carried on, blind to loss, creating the conditions for something greater than themselves. In their endless sealing of water, they prepared the world for the coming of the sandworm, the colossal force that would one day dominate the planet. The transformation was not sudden, yet when it was complete, the memory of oceans seemed almost mythical. What had once been blue and green became a landscape of ochre and gold. The horizon was no longer broken by waves, but by dunes rising and falling in endless succession. The winds sharpened, carrying grains of sand that scraped against stone and skin. The land hardened into deserts so vast that they swallowed entire ranges. What little life remained learned to hide, burrowing into the ground, or adapting in ways that made survival possible only through extraordinary resilience. Imagine standing there at the edge of this transformation, watching the last of the waters sink beneath the sand. You would feel the heat swell around you until breath itself grew difficult. You would taste dryness on your tongue, a thirst that never eased. You would see the seabed cracking, curling upward, while above, the sky gleamed empty of clouds. What had been alive and abundant now stood bare and merciless. This was how Arrakis became Dune, not a natural desert, but a planet deliberately remade, its lifeblood hidden away, its face scorched clean of softness. From that moment forward, every day became a trial. The sun seared without mercy, and the night offered no refuge, only another kind of threat. To live here was to be tested, to endure conditions so extreme that survival itself became a fragile miracle. The world that once welcomed life had closed in upon itself, locking away its abundance in secret caverns. Arrakis had become a desert absolute, a furnace by day, a frozen void by night. It had been transformed into a stage for forces greater than humanity, forces that would shape not only its ecology, but the destiny of an empire yet to come. Now imagine stepping into the Arrakis that exists today, long after its transformation has sealed away the oceans. What stretches before you is not a world of balance, but of extremes, a landscape that never forgives. The desert is endless, its dunes rising and collapsing like waves frozen in time, rolling to every horizon. Each step sinks into sand that shifts beneath your weight, and every gust of wind carries thousands of grains that cut at skin and sting the eyes. The air is dry, so dry that each breath feels like it steals more moisture from your body than it gives. Here, the desert itself seems alive, not with generosity, but with a will to resist every attempt at survival. The sun dominates everything. When it rises, it does not warm but burns, searing the surface until it glows with heat. Rocks split under the pressure, and even shadows provide no comfort, for the air itself radiates heat, as though the planet were an oven left open. At midday, the temperature rises beyond what human bodies were ever meant to endure. To linger without protection is not simply uncomfortable, it is fatal. And yet when night arrives, the balance shifts with equal ferocity. The warmth evaporates into the open sky, and the air grows sharp and cold. It cuts through cloth, pierces bone, and leaves travelers shivering under stars that shine with cruel clarity. To live on Arrakis is to swing between fire and ice with each turn of the day. Water, that most common of substances elsewhere, here becomes the most precious treasure imaginable. It is not drawn from rivers or skies, but wrestled from the body itself, reclaimed from sweat, from breath, from the very vapor of life. The people who dwell here wear still suits, intricate garments designed to recycle every drop of moisture. What they drink has passed through their bodies many times, filtered and preserved, because nothing can be wasted. A spilled cup is not simply carelessness, it is sacrilege, a betrayal of the community's fragile survival. On Arrakis, to live is to understand that every droplet is sacred, every breath part of a cycle that cannot be broken. The desert enforces this truth without mercy. Creatures that exist above the sands are few, adapted with strange and extraordinary resilience. Plants are nearly absent, save for those carefully nurtured in hidden places. Most life clings underground, where heat is less brutal, and even their existence is precarious. Humanity itself is an intruder, tolerated only so long as it bends entirely to the rules of this world. The Fremen, the desert's native people, have embraced those rules fully, building a culture that honors water as holy and survival as sacred duty. For others, the off-worlders who come only to harvest spice, Arrakis is no home but an enemy, a place to be endured for the sake of wealth and power. And always, beneath the surface, waits the greatest terror of all, the sandworm. They rise without warning, drawn to vibration, massive beyond comprehension, their approach signaled only by the deep rumble of shifting earth. To outsiders they are monsters, threats to mining equipment and lives. To the Fremen they are gods, embodiments of the desert's will. Their presence ensures that even the act of survival is never secure. The desert offers spice, but it also guards it with living forces that no technology can truly command. To walk upon Arrakis in the present age is to know humility. The planet does not bend to human ambition, nor does it make concessions for weakness. Its silence is absolute, broken only by the hiss of wind and the thunder of worms below. Each day is a negotiation with death, each night a reprieve that lasts only until the sun returns. Arrakis is not a world made for comfort or rest. It is a crucible, designed to test, to strip away illusions, to reveal the fragility of life, clinging at the edge of possibility. To endure here is not to conquer the desert, but to be shaped by it, hardened, diminished, yet bound forever to its merciless rhythm. Arrakis would be nothing more than a graveyard of sand, were it not for one element hidden within its shifting surface. Scattered in delicate traces, glowing faintly beneath the light, lies melange, the spice. It is unlike any other substance known to humanity, simple in appearance, yet carrying a weight of power so immense that the entire galaxy bends toward it. On this one planet, in this one unforgiving desert, the foundation of empire has been laid. The spice is life, but not in the ordinary sense. Those who partake of it discover that their years extend beyond the natural span. The body remains stronger, the mind clearer, the senses sharpened, until even the smallest detail seems illuminated. For many, that alone is enough to transform existence, for in the Imperium, longevity is the greatest privilege of all. Yet melange offers more than mere endurance. In those attuned to its essence, it awakens a deeper awareness, a widening of perception that borders on the miraculous. There are moments when time itself seems to loosen, when glimpses of what has not yet occurred press against the edges of the mind. A choice can be guided by such visions, a future shaped before it arrives. But the gift is inseparable from dependency. Once the body has grown accustomed to melange, it cannot survive without it. Withdrawal is not simply painful, it is fatal. The addiction binds even the most powerful, ensuring that no emperor, no noble, no guild navigator can ever sever themselves from Arrakis. Over time, the spice leaves its mark upon those who consume it. Eyes turn the deep, unmistakable blue within blue, a sign of exposure that cannot be concealed. The guild navigators, immersed for years in concentrated spice gas, are transformed so completely that they become something beyond recognition, their bodies reshaped by the substance that sustains their visions. The value of melange cannot be measured in coin or metal, for it is not merely a commodity, it is the pulse of the Imperium itself. Armies march because spice allows them to be paid. Fleets sail because spice allows them to move between the stars. It serves as hidden currency, exchanged in secret pacts and sealed in treaties, its presence felt in every chamber of power. The wealth it generates flows into the coffers of houses, funds the Emperor's Sardaukar legions, and secures the Spacing Guild's monopoly on travel. A single shipment can determine the rise or fall of dynasties, altering the balance of the Landsraad with the weight of a whisper. Even in the most distant corners of the Empire, melange touches daily life. Among the Fremen, it is baked into bread and brewed into drink, its flavor woven into their very culture. In the halls of nobility, it perfumes banquets, its presence as much a symbol of prestige as it is of indulgence. In the sealed chambers of the guild, it fills the tanks in which navigators drift, sustaining their prescient visions of folded space. Everywhere it appears, it is both a blessing and a chain, granting power while demanding obedience to the desert that creates it. Thus, Arrakis, harsh and barren, holds the galaxy in its grasp. The value of spice is not only in what it grants, but in what its absence would mean. Without melange, interstellar travel ceases. Without melange, the delicate balance of houses collapses. Without melange, the Imperium itself dies. All the wealth, armies, and thrones of humanity rest upon grains of glowing dust scattered across dunes that care nothing for the fates they sustain. Arrakis may resist life, but through spice it commands it. And in this paradox lies the greatest truth of all. A universe that spans countless stars is bound together by a substance found only in one hostile desert, guarded by forces no emperor can master, and no dynasty can live without. Arrakis is more than a planet. It is the axis upon which the entire Imperium turns, the silent heart beating beneath dunes of gold and stone. Those who rule across the stars may claim their power rests on armies, alliances, and bloodlines. Yet every throne is ultimately secured by what this single desert yields. In the quiet mathematics of survival, it is spice that crowns emperors, funds wars, and determines which houses rise and which fall into ruin. The Padishah Emperor himself owes his strength to this arrangement. His Sardaukar legions, feared across the galaxy for their ruthless discipline, are sustained not only by training and loyalty, but by the wealth that spice secures. Without the revenues of Arrakis, even the Emperor's armies would falter, their steel rusting like any other. His throne, polished and ancient, gleams because spice shipments keep flowing. His word carries weight because melange makes it possible to buy allegiance, to bribe dissenters, to silence rivals before they strike. Yet his power, so vast in appearance, is chained to the same fragile sands that could swallow it overnight. The Landsraad, that sprawling council of noble houses, exists in perpetual tension with the Emperor, and their struggles are measured not only in armies, but in spice shares. Each house knows that to secure its future, it must secure access to melange. Alliances form, not from kinship or trust, but from promises of shipments, investments, and trade routes that lead back, always, to Arrakis. Even houses far removed from the desert understand that their survival depends on the silent flow of spice into their coffers. They maneuver, they betray, they plot, but all of it is theater played out around a single resource, more precious than loyalty or honor. The Spacing Guild, perhaps more than any other, embodies the paradox of power tied to dependence. Its navigators, immersed endlessly in spice gas, open the paths between stars, making the galaxy navigable and commerce possible. The Guild holds no armies, claims no planets, yet it commands an authority greater than both Emperor and Landsrat. To offend the Guild is to risk being cut off from the stars, marooned on a single planet with no escape. But their power is also a prison, for without spice their navigators are blind. Their dominance is absolute only so long as Arrakis continues to feed their tanks. And in the shadows move the Bene Gesserit, whose schemes stretch across generations. They do not rule openly, yet they rule nonetheless, whispering into the ears of monarchs, planting faith and prophecy in distant worlds, shaping bloodlines as though humanity itself were clay. Spice is their sacrament, the substance that expands awareness, heightens perception, and grants Reverend Mother's visions too deep for words. They may manipulate thrones and councils, but they too bend, silently, toward Arrakis, bound by the need for what only the desert can provide. Thus, across the Imperium, every structure of power bends toward the same point of gravity. The Emperor, the houses, the Guild, the Sisterhood, each believes itself indispensable, yet all orbit around the desert as though it were a hidden sun. Arrakis dictates the rhythm of politics, the tempo of wars, the course of dynasties. It does not speak, it does not yield, yet its silence compels obedience from all who draw strength from spice. In this way, the true ruler of the Imperium is not crowned, not seated on a throne, not sworn by blood or law. It is a barren world, hostile and merciless, whose golden dust commands empires without lifting a hand. Fleets rise and fall, palaces gleam and crumble, councils assemble and dissolve, but all of them, without exception, circle back to Arrakis. The center of power is not where emperors sit or banners fly. It is here, in the desert, where the fate of galaxies rests upon grains of spice hidden in the sand. The presence of melange on Arrakis transforms the desert from a wasteland into the center of the galaxy. It is not merely a resource or a treasure. It is a force that alters the course of every life it touches. To speak of spice is to speak of existence itself, for in a universe that stretches across unimaginable distances, melange is the thread that binds all together. Its first gift is longevity. To take spice into the body is to slow the erosion of years, to feel the passing of time softened, as though the sand itself flows more gently through the hourglass. For the common citizen, even the smallest measure woven into food or drink brings vitality, lending sharper eyes, steadier limbs, and a spirit less burdened by fatigue. Among the wealthy and powerful, who command constant supplies, the change is more profound. Decades become centuries, lifetimes extend into eras. Nobles hold their power longer, rulers tighten their grip across generations, bloodlines maintain influence because melange sustains them. In the Imperium, where survival often determines dominion, the spice is more than comfort. It is security, the key to continuity. Beyond the gift of life extended lies another, stranger power. Melange sharpens the senses in ways that cannot be measured by ordinary words. Colors seem brighter, sounds more resonant, patterns in speech and gesture more easily grasped. Awareness deepens until even the smallest detail feels alive with significance. The mind becomes attuned not only to the present moment, but to possibilities that stretch beyond it. Some speak of dreams so vivid they linger like memory, of intuitions so strong they guide choices with uncanny precision. A rare few, more sensitive than most, are granted something greater still, brief visions of futures not yet lived, fragments of the tapestry of time revealed through the spice's influence. Such gifts come at a cost. Dependency settles in quietly at first, then claims its hold with absolute force. Once the body has grown accustomed to melange, it cannot live without it. Deprivation does not weaken slowly, it kills swiftly. Thus the spice, while it extends life, also chains it. No ruler, no guild, no individual can abandon its use without facing death. Power in the Imperium is not only drawn from spice, it is shackled by it. In this paradox lies its hold over civilization, a gift so essential that it enslaves all who taste it. Over time, the body bears visible marks of devotion to melange. The eyes, deep and saturated, shift to the unmistakable blue within blue, glowing in shadow like pools of night water. Among the Fremen, this transformation is universal, worn proudly as a sign of belonging. Elsewhere, it is both revered and feared, a signal that one's life is tied irreversibly to the desert. For the navigators of the Spacing Guild, whose entire existence is immersion in concentrated spice gas, the transformation goes even further. Their bodies twist and stretch beyond recognition, reshaped by the substance they cannot live without, becoming something less human, yet infinitely more necessary. Their prescient vision opens the pathways between stars, and in so doing, the Guild maintains its stranglehold on travel and trade. And still, spice is more than biology. It is culture, economy, and religion. The Fremen bake it into bread, season their food with it, inhale its essence in ceremonies. For them, it is not luxury, but life, as inseparable from existence as water. Among nobles, it perfumes banquets, presented as a symbol of wealth as much as indulgence. In the chambers of the Bene Gesserit, it serves as the key to rituals that unlock hidden awareness and transform women into reverend mothers capable of perceiving memories beyond their own. Everywhere it travels, it alters not only the body but the soul, shaping identities and destinies alike. Thus melange becomes more than a substance. It is miracle and chain, liberation and prison, blessing and curse. To live in the Imperium is to live under its shadow, for no house, no guild, no emperor, and no citizen can escape the reach of spice. Arrakis, the desert that denies water, offers instead a substance that sustains life in ways both wondrous and terrible. And from this paradox flows the truth. The galaxy does not merely value melange, it is enslaved to it. Every gift of melon carries with it a hidden cost, and in truth, the cost is never hidden for long. The spice is a miracle, yes, but it is also a chain that binds the body, the mind, and entire civilizations. To speak of its wonders without its dangers would be to tell only half the story, and on Arrakis, nothing remains whole without its shadow. Addiction is the first and most unforgiving truth of melange. A taste may begin as pleasure, a mild sharpening of thought, a glow of energy that lifts the spirit, but the body learns quickly, and soon the presence of spice is not luxury, but necessity. Dependency tightens with each measure consumed. To be deprived of it is not to suffer slowly, but to face death. The withdrawal of spice does not weaken, it ends. This truth ensures that no one who begins its use can ever freely abandon it. From the poorest Fremen child to the Emperor himself, all who take melange are bound to Arrakis by invisible chains. The body, too, is transformed. Its most visible mark is in the eyes, blue within blue, the pigment of melange, saturating until the whites vanish, leaving only a color that glows with uncanny intensity. Among the Fremen, these eyes are worn with pride, proof of belonging to the desert and its rhythms. To outsiders, they are both fascination and warning, a reminder that the spice leaves nothing untouched. With prolonged use, changes deepen. Skin, posture, even the rhythm of the heart may shift under its influence. For some, mutations take hold. reshaping them into forms barely recognizable as human. The navigators of the Spacing Guild embody this transformation most completely. Immersed for years in dense clouds of spice gas, their bodies stretch and twist into strange silhouettes. What they lose in human form they gain in prescient vision, the ability to guide ships through folded space, steering entire fleets across distances no machine could safely chart. Yet their existence is fragile, dependent every moment on the vapor that sustains them. Without it, their visions collapse, and with them the Imperium's capacity to travel between stars. They are the most powerful travelers in the universe, and at the same time the most enslaved. Beyond the body, the dangers extend into the desert itself. Spice is not harvested from fields or mines, but wrestled from the sands under constant threat. The process is perilous. For every spice blow, every pre-spice mass, and every worm that rises beneath the dunes is a reminder that Arrakis defends what it produces. The harvester machines are massive, crawling across the desert like metal insects, scooping up the glittering dust, but their vibrations echo through the sands, calling forth the great sandworms. These creatures sense rhythm as surely as blood senses a heartbeat. A harvester that lingers too long will find the ground shuddering, and then the surface splits open as Shai-Hulud ascends, a mountain of flesh and teeth, erasing both machine and men. Only the swift arrival of carryalls, aircraft designed to lift the harvesters away, prevents certain death. The workers who labor there know they walk a line as thin as a single grain of spice. Even survival brings its own peril. A sudden spice blow can erupt without warning, releasing gas and flame that consume anything nearby. The harvest yields wealth beyond imagining, but always at the edge of destruction. Every shipment carries not only value, but the memory of danger, a reminder that melange is never freely given. Thus, the spice is both miracle and curse. It extends life yet binds it. It sharpens awareness, yet reshapes the body. It fuels empires, yet demands sacrifices in blood and fire. Every power in the Imperium bows before it, not only because of what it offers, but because of what they fear without it. Spice is abundance wrapped in peril, prosperity shadowed by death. And in this truth lies the inescapable paradox of Arrakis. The greatest treasure in the universe is also the most dangerous burden, a gift that enslaves even as it sustains. To speak of melan is not only to speak of life and vision, but also of wealth. The spice is the bloodstream of the Imperium's economy, a hidden currency more valuable than any other, woven into every transaction, every contract, every war. Gold can be measured, precious metals can be mined, fuels can be burned, but spice is beyond comparison, for it sustains not only the body, but the very framework of civilization. Its worth lies not in what it can be traded for, but in what collapses without it. Across the Empire, melange functions as the ultimate marker of value. It is whispered of in markets, weighed in vaults, accounted for in the secret ledgers of houses and guilds alike. A single shipment of spice can purchase fleets, topple dynasties, or buy the allegiance of armies. To control it is to hold leverage over millions of worlds, for no rival can do without it. Economies are not balanced by coin or paper, but by the silent flow of spice from Arrakis. Its presence turns treaties into law, and its absence reduces even great houses to desperation. This hidden economy stretches into every corner of life. In the kitchens of the Fremen, spice is mixed into bread and drink, its flavor inseparable from their culture. On noble tables, it perfumes the richest feasts, a subtle sign of wealth and refinement. In trade halls and guild chambers, it is exchanged not openly, but through networks of privilege, access granted only to those with the means to sustain the constant hunger for more. And in the depths of the Spacing Guild, spice saturates the very air, its vapor both sustenance and prison for navigators who guide the Empire's fleets. Wherever one looks, melange appears, not always seen, but always present, threading itself through every act of commerce, every expression of power. What makes spice so unique in economic terms is not only its universality, but its singularity. There is no substitute, no alchemy, no technology, no synthetic method has ever replicated its properties. While metals can be replaced, while fuels can be drawn from countless planets, melange comes only from Arrakis. The monopoly is absolute, and from that monopoly arises both stability and constant conflict. Every house, every emperor, every guild is locked into the same paradox. They must have spice to survive, yet none can control its source without risk of destruction by sandworm or rebellion by Fremen. The flow continues, but always under threat, always under the shadow of scarcity. This scarcity is what makes spice the most dangerous form of wealth. Unlike gold or jewels, it cannot simply be hoarded without consequence. To withdraw spice from circulation is to threaten the entire imperium with collapse. To lose access is to lose life itself. Thus, the politics of the empire revolve not around ownership in the conventional sense, but around influence, shares, and rights of harvest. Even the Comb Company, the Combine Honiton, Ober Advancer Mercantiles, serves not as a free market, but as a tightly controlled mechanism by which houses compete for slices of the spice trade. Behind every political alliance, every marriage contract, every declaration of war, the question of spice is present, unspoken but undeniable. In this way, melange functions as both symbol and substance of power. Its glittering dust is the coin with which empires are built, the pledge with which loyalty is secured, the tool with which rivals are destroyed. To taste it is to accept not only its gifts but its chains. To trade it is to enter into a system from which no one can escape. The Emperor, the Guild, the Landsraad, even the Bene Gesserit, all cloak their ambitions in noble words, yet all are bound by the same dependency, all driven by the same hunger. The secret currency of the universe is not minted in gold, nor pressed into notes. It drifts instead in grains of glowing dust across the sands of a single desert. And because of it, an empire that spans the stars rests on foundations no firmer than the wind, a marketplace where the only true measure of wealth is how tightly one can cling to the flow of spice. The power of melange is not measured only in years extended, in visions granted, or in wealth amassed. Its deepest influence lies in the quiet dependency it creates, a chain so absolute that no one, from the lowest citizen to the highest throne, can escape its pull. This is the invisible bond of spice, the silent enslavement that sustains an empire while holding it captive to a single desert world. The emperor himself, sovereign of millions of worlds, embodies this paradox. His armies march at his command, his decrees reach across the stars, yet his authority is not secured by steel or bloodline alone. It rests on the steady flow of melange. With spice he pays the Sardaukar. With spice he maintains loyalty among nobles. With spice he ensures that the guild ships continue to carry his emissaries and his edicts. Without Arrakis, the throne would not endure a single generation. In this way, even the emperor kneels before the desert, though he may never admit it aloud. The noble houses of the Landsraad, too, are ensnared. They battle for power, weaving alliances and betrayals across centuries. Yet their measure of influence is counted not simply in armies or planets, but in spice shares. To extend their lifespans, to preserve dynasties across generations, they rely on constant supply. The courts of dukes and barons glitter with excess, their feasts perfumed by spice, their coffers filled by trade in it. Yet each banquet, each toast, is a reminder that they cannot sever themselves from Arrakis. Without spice, their prestige crumbles, their rivals overtake them, their long dynastic games collapse into dust. The Spacing Guild, perhaps more than any other, lies bound in chains of its own making. Its navigators, deformed and sustained by immersion in spice, alone possess the ability to fold space. They hold the arteries of the Imperium in their grasp, controlling commerce, war, and diplomacy. But their monopoly is not freedom. it is dependence. Without spice, their visions vanish. Without spice, their entire order becomes blind, their fleets stranded, their authority dissolved. The guild's power, absolute in appearance, is in truth fragile, for it rests entirely on the vapor that fills their tanks. Their silence and neutrality are masks for their fear of losing access, fear of seeing their future collapse with the supply they cannot live without. And then there are the Bene Gesserit, the sisterhood that threads its influence through courts and bloodlines, whose patience spans centuries. They too are woven into this invisible chain. Their most sacred rituals, the spice agony that awakens ancestral memories, depend on melange. Their heightened awareness, their path toward the Kwisatz Haderach, all of it is impossible without the desert's gift. They manipulate thrones and plant prophecies, yet behind their control lies a dependency as deep as any other. Without spice, their designs unravel, their power dissolves, their secrets turn to silence. Thus every pillar of the Imperium, throne, council, guild, and sisterhood, rests on the same fragile axis. Each believes itself indispensable, yet all are captives of Arrakis. The chain is invisible, yet unbreakable, binding even those who imagine themselves masters. Melange does not roar with the voice of armies. It does not glitter like banners in sunlight, but its presence dictates every decision. Its absence threatens every life. In this way, the true ruler of the Imperium is not crowned in gold, but scattered in dust, carried on the desert winds, guarded by creatures no one dares control. The invisible chain of spice is the most perfect form of power, a force that gives freely, yet takes everything in return. It sustains the galaxy, while ensuring that the galaxy can never escape its grip. Beneath all grandeur and authority lies this simple truth: without Arrakis, without melange, the Imperium is nothing. And so an empire of countless stars bows in silence to a desert that does not bend, its rulers enslaved by the very substance that defines their strength. Beneath the endless dunes of Arrakis, hidden from the burning eye of the sun, there moves a creature small enough to be overlooked, yet powerful enough to alter the destiny of empires. The sand trout does not inspire awe at first glance. It is leathery, unremarkable, neither beautiful nor terrifying. But appearances on Arrakis have never told the whole truth. What matters is not how the sand trout looks, but what it does. In its relentless, mindless purpose lies the foundation of the desert and the secret of the spice. The sand trout seeks only one thing: water. It finds it in droplets and rivulets, in underground veins and hidden reservoirs, and it embraces it completely. With a tenacity unmatched, the creature wraps itself around moisture, sealing it away from the surface, locking it beneath the sands. A single sand trout is insignificant, but together they are innumerable. Generations upon generations have worked the planet like unseen architects, removing the oceans, draining the rivers, silencing the clouds. Their labor transformed Arrakis from a world once lush and temperate into the arid furnace it is today. The seas did not dry on their own. They were captured, drop by drop, in the living cisterns of sand trout that still lie deep beneath the crust. This process is not destruction but design. Though the sand trout show no intent as humans would understand it, their work prepares the world for what follows, the coming of the sandworm. In this sense, they are not merely creatures, but builders, shaping the conditions required for the immense cycle of life that will one day produce the spice. Their instinctive drive to hoard water is what ensures that the desert remains absolute, what keeps the skies clear and the sands endless. Without their labor, the ecology of Arrakis would collapse, and with it the precious substance upon which the galaxy depends. For humans, the presence of sand trout is a constant reminder of exclusion. To them, water is survival. To sand trout, it is fuel for transformation. The very element that sustains human life is stripped away, made inaccessible, locked into deep chambers where it can no longer be touched. The people who dwell on Arrakis live under this denial, forced to treat every drop of water as sacred because the sand trout have stolen abundance from them. In this way, the creatures dictate human culture without ever touching it. They are invisible masters, rewriting the conditions of existence in silence. The paradox grows sharper when one realizes that the sand trout's sealing of water is not an accident, but the foundation of spice itself. Without aridity, there can be no pre-spice masses, no eruptions of gas and flame, no golden dust scattered across the desert floor. What feels like theft to humans is in truth the first movement in a symphony of survival, one that culminates in the melange that sustains the Imperium. The sand trout are the first players in the cycle, insignificant in size, yet infinite in consequence. To walk upon the desert is to walk above their unseen work. Every dune, every dry basin, every parched canyon exists because of their endless task. In the silence beneath the sand, they carry on, sealing, hoarding, transforming. They are not worshipped like the sandworm, nor hunted like prey, but their presence is absolute, woven into every breath of dust-filled air. Thus, the story of Arrakis begins not with empires or armies, not even with the colossal sandworms that shape the ground, but with creatures no larger than a hand, slipping silently through the sand. They are the forgotten architects of the desert, the foundation of the cycle that produces the spice, the first link in the chain that binds an empire. Without the sand trout, there would be no desert. Without the desert, there would be no spice. And without spice, there would be no Imperium. In their quiet persistence lies the truth of Arrakis. The smallest life can shape the fate of the greatest powers. The desert of Arrakis is never still. Beneath its shifting surface, forces gather in silence, unseen and unmeasured, until the sands themselves erupt with violence. To understand the origin of melange, one must look not at what drifts across the dunes, but at what ferments below them. This is the hidden stage of the spice cycle, the creation of the pre-spice mass, and the explosion known as the spice blow. When sand trout encounter water too abundant to seal away, their instinctive labor reaches its limit. Instead of capturing it, they die in the attempt, merging into each other, forming a living reservoir of chemical reaction. This strange mass, swollen with gases and organic decay, becomes the crucible of transformation. Buried deep in the desert, unseen by any surface dweller, it grows in silence. Days may pass, even weeks, as pressure builds, heat gathers, and the mass swells toward the moment of release. It is a process as natural as breathing, yet catastrophic in its outcome. The pre-spice mass is no passive phenomenon. It is volatile, unstable, and profoundly dangerous. Those who wander unknowingly above such a pocket may feel the ground tremble, hear a distant rumble, as if the desert itself were groaning. Then, without warning, the earth splits. Flame and gas erupt upward in a geyser of sound and fury, throwing sand high into the air, scattering it across the horizon. The explosion scorches everything within reach, a violent release of the energy stored below. To be caught near a spice blow is certain death, for no human body can withstand the fire or the poisoned gases it unleashes. Yet from this violence comes creation. As the mass bursts, clouds of vapor rise, rich with the raw essence of melange. Heated by the sun, dried by the arid winds, these gases settle once more upon the sand, crystallizing into the glowing dust that is harvested as spice. What is destruction for any who linger nearby is renewal for the desert itself, the very moment when melange enters the world once more. For the Fremen, spice blows are both danger and blessing. They mark them carefully, reading the subtle shifts in sand, listening for tremors that warn of eruption. To approach too soon is to court death, yet to wait too long is to lose the harvest to wind and storm. Many of their lives are spent balancing this razor edge between peril and bounty, risking annihilation for the chance to claim the treasure left behind. In their culture, the spice blow is a symbol of both fear and providence, a reminder that survival and sacrifice are never far apart. The Imperium views these eruptions differently. with the cold eye of industry. To the houses and the emperor, spice blows are obstacles to be managed, unpredictable hazards that threaten harvesters and slow the flow of shipments. Their response is mechanical, machines, schedules, patrols. Yet no machinery, no matter how advanced, can tame the violence of the pre-spice mass. The desert creates on its own terms, and it punishes those who forget its sovereignty. There is a strange poetry in this process, that the most valuable substance in the universe is born of death and eruption, of creatures perishing in their futile attempt to hoard water, of the desert tearing itself apart in bursts of fire. The galaxy depends upon these violent events, even as it fears them. Every grain of melange harvested in quiet markets or noble feasts carries within it the memory of explosion, the echo of the desert's fury. Thus the spice blow becomes more than a natural event. It is a revelation of Arrakis itself, its hostility, its mystery, its indifference to human need. The desert gives, but only through violence. It sustains, but only by reminding all who harvest that they stand on shifting ground. And in the aftermath, when the winds carry away the last smoke and the sands settle into silence, melange remains, the treasure that binds empires, born in the crucible of destruction. Across the desert of Arrakis, beneath dunes that stretch beyond sight, there moves a presence vast enough to shake the ground. It does not appear often, but when it does, it is unforgettable. The surface begins to ripple, the sand quivers with rhythm, and then the earth itself rises as Shai-Hulud, the great sandworm, breaks into the light. To encounter one is to feel the insignificance of humanity laid bare. These creatures are not simply animals, they are the embodiment of the desert itself, living symbols of a world that refuses to be mastered. The sandworm is colossal in scale. Some are said to reach lengths of more than 2,000 meters, their segmented bodies stretching like mountains in motion. Their hides are armored with ridges harder than steel, glistening under the sun as they twist and turn across the dunes. Their mouths, ringed with countless crystalline teeth, are wide enough to swallow machines whole. To stand before such a being is to stand before inevitability, a force that cannot be bargained with or subdued. Yet the sandworm is not only terror, it is the keystone of Arrakis's strange ecology. From the smallest sand plankton to the sand trout that seal away water, all of the desert's cycles lead toward and depend upon Shai-Hulud. The worms guard the spice, for it is within their life cycle that melange is created. Without them, the pre-spice masses would never form, and the explosions that scatter the dust of melange would never take place. Their existence is inseparable from the treasure that sustains the Imperium. To kill the worm is to kill the source of spice, and in doing so, to doom the empire that relies on it. The paradox is sharp. For the Imperium, the sandworm is an obstacle, a threat to harvesting machines, a hazard to every expedition. They are drawn to vibrations, footsteps, engines, the steady rhythm of any movement across the desert. When a harvester digs too long in one place, the ground begins to tremble, and a worm will rise, erasing the machine and its crew in a single sweep. No armor is strong enough, no weapon large enough to hold back such a force. Entire operations exist only to monitor, distract, or divert these creatures long enough to scrape spice from the sands. In every shipment, in every vial of melange, there is the risk of lives lost to Shai-Hulud's hunger. For the Fremen, however, the worm is something far greater than danger. To them, Shai-Hulud is divine, the old man of the desert, eternal and sacred. They worship and revere it, seeing in the worm not only the giver of spice, but also the embodiment of strength and endurance. They have learned not only to avoid its fury, but to ride upon its back, mastering the perilous art of hooking a worm and guiding its immense body across the sands. In doing so, they turn danger into power, transforming the most fearsome creature into a mount and ally. For the Fremen, the worm is not an enemy but a god, a living covenant with the desert. And still, Shai-Hulud remains indifferent. Whether worshipped as a deity or cursed as a destroyer, the sandworm continues its endless rhythm beneath the dunes. Its cycle is older than empires, older than the dreams of humans, older even than memory. It will outlast the Imperium, for it is the desert, and the desert does not fade when dynasties fall. Thus the sandworm stands as the ultimate paradox of Arrakis, a terror that destroys, yet a being without which there can be no spice, a god to some, a menace to others, but in truth, the silent architect of the Imperium's survival. To see one rise from the sands is to witness not only the power of the desert, but the fragility of those who depend upon it. For in every grain of spice, in every breath of melange, there is the echo of Shai-Hulud's passage through the sands. In every world known to humankind, water is life. It flows through rivers and rains, fills oceans and lakes, nourishes the green of fields and forests. To encounter water is to encounter the very foundation of survival. Yet on Arrakis, this truth fractures into paradox. Here, water is not simply scarce, it is both salvation and destruction, gift and poison, blessing and doom. For humanity, the meaning of water is sharpened by absence. Every drop is precious, hoarded, guarded, reclaimed from the body itself. The Fremen know this truth better than any. Within their still suits, moisture is captured from sweat and breath, every ounce recycled to sustain life in a place where no rain falls. They measure wealth, not in coin, but in rings of water, a currency that reflects survival itself. In their rituals, even death yields back its water to the tribe, for nothing may be wasted. In the Siege basins, great reservoirs are hidden away, silent oceans sleeping in stone chambers, each drop a promise toward a future where Arrakis might bloom again. To the Fremen, water is not only survival, it is hope. But for the sandworm, Shai-Hulud, water is death. The substance that sustains humans corrodes the worm's flesh, dissolving the body of the desert god. To pour water upon one is to destroy it, to unravel the ancient cycle that binds sand trout, spice, and worm together. And if the worms vanish, so too does melange. The spice is born only from the crucible of aridity, from the desert's relentless denial of moisture. Water breaks that cycle. What is life for humankind is extinction for the worms, and with their extinction comes the collapse of the Imperium itself. This contradiction lies at the very heart of Arrakis. On one side, the Empire, dependent on spice, demands that the desert remain dry, hostile, merciless. On the other side, the Fremen dream of transformation, of a world where green fields replace dunes, where rivers run under skies softened by clouds. Their vision is not folly, it is a secret project. Generations in the making, reservoirs, hidden, seedlings planted, a slow reshaping of their world. But to achieve it would mean the death of the worms and the end of spice. What would be salvation for the Fremen would be catastrophe for the Imperium. Thus, Arrakis embodies a tension that cannot be reconciled. The Imperium requires the desert to remain barren, for only then can the worms thrive and spice flow. The Fremen desire its rebirth, for only then can their people live free of constant thirst and hardship. Between these two visions lies an irreconcilable future. If Arrakis blooms, the galaxy starves. If it remains a wasteland, the Fremen are forever bound to scarcity. In this paradox lies the destiny of empires. The desert itself seems to speak in riddles through this truth. Sandstorms rise like tempests of judgment, erasing footprints, swallowing machines, reminding all who enter that power here is temporary. A dune may shift in a single night, reshaping the horizon as if the land itself were a warning. One slip, one flood, one shift of balance, and the empire that depends on spice may crumble just as easily. To stand upon Arrakis is to feel this contradiction in every breath, the thirst that demands water, and the knowledge that water destroys the very cycle that sustains the Imperium. It is to live suspended between need and doom, caught between survival and collapse. In the silence of the desert, where the stars shine cold above, this truth is inescapable. Arrakis is not merely hostile, it is divided against itself, and through that division, it holds the fate of all who depend upon it. The paradox of water is the paradox of empire itself, that what sustains one life extinguishes another, and that all power, no matter how vast, rests upon conditions as fragile as the balance between sand and rain. At the very summit of the Imperium stands the Padishah Emperor, sovereign of millions of worlds, supreme in title, cloaked in ceremony that makes him appear eternal. His throne room is a theater of power, filled with golden banners, perfumed air, nobles kneeling in ritual submission, and Sardaukar guards stationed like shadows at every pillar. To the common citizen, his authority seems unquestionable, a constant as enduring as the stars themselves. Yet beneath the spectacle lies a truth, both humbling and fragile. The emperor's might does not spring solely from bloodline or tradition, nor even from the terror of his armies. It endures only because of spice flowing endlessly from Arrakis. Without melange, his rule would wither like waterless grass beneath the desert sun. His most visible strength lies in the Sardaukar, the legions bred on Seleucia Secundus, a prison planet so brutal that only the strongest survive. From childhood, they are hardened by starvation, pain, and relentless struggle. Those who endure emerge as warriors unmatched, loyal to the emperor, with a fervor forged in suffering. Tales of their ferocity echo through the Imperium, stories of worlds surrendering without a fight at the mere rumor of Sardaukar deployment. To see their grey uniforms is to know defeat, to hear their boots is to hear the end of resistance. They are not only soldiers, but the Emperor's weapon of fear, his living proof of invincibility. And yet, even these legions of terror march because spice allows them to. Their training, their armament, their transport across the galaxy, none of it exists without the wealth Arrakis provides. The Emperor's grip on the Imperium is not secured by ceremony alone, but by melange shipments financing every campaign, every ship, every soldier. The Sardaukar may fight like gods, but gods must still eat, and their strength is tied to the harvest of a hostile desert. Remove spice from the equation, and the Grey Legions would dissolve into men, their legend collapsing as swiftly as their supply lines. But the Emperor does not rule unopposed. Surrounding his throne is the Landsraad, the council of noble houses. Each house governs its own domains, like a kingdom, complete with armies, fleets, and wealth rivaling entire planets. Their politics are endless, alliances shifting like sand, betrayals whispered behind silk curtains. They are jealous of the Emperor's strength, yet wary of open defiance. The balance of their power is measured not only in bloodlines or banners, but in spice. With spice, they extend their lives, maintain dynastic continuity, and fund their endless rivalries. Without it, they would crumble. Thus their intrigues, however elaborate, all circle back to Arrakis. They may play at independence, but they are chained to the same desert that feeds the Emperor's throne. Above both Emperor and Landsraad looms the Spacing Guild, silent yet omnipresent. They hold no planets, command no armies, wear no crowns, and yet their monopoly on travel makes them indispensable. Only their navigators, twisted by generations of immersion in spice gas, can see into folded space, charting safe paths for starships to traverse impossible distances. Without them, fleets could not move, merchants could not trade, armies could not march. Their silence is their weapon, for to withhold passage is to exile worlds, to maroon empires, to suffocate economies. They are untouchable, for no one dares defy them, yet their absolute power hides an absolute weakness. Without spice, their visions fade, their navigators collapse, their monopoly turns to dust. Like the Emperor and the houses, the Guild is chained to Arrakis, its seeming independence revealed as another form of captivity. The Bene Gesserit complete the picture, though they move in shadows rather than halls of open power. Their sisterhood whispers into the ears of kings and dukes, cultivates bloodlines, manipulates prophecy, and shapes destinies. They too rely upon melange, their sacred rituals, the spice agony that awakens ancestral memory cannot be performed without it. Their awareness, their perception, their dreams of birthing the Kwisatz Haderach, all rest upon the same grains of glowing dust that swirl across the Arrakeen wind. Thus the tripod of imperial power, the Emperor, the Landsraad, and the Guild, is revealed not as three independent forces, but as three captives, chained to a desert they cannot control. The Bene Gesserit, though hidden, are likewise ensnared. The throne of the Padishah shines with splendor, but it is splendor balanced on sand. The Council of Houses shouts with authority, but their voices tremble at the thought of scarcity. The Guild navigates the stars with confidence, but they drift only so long as spice sustains their visions. Each faction imagines itself master of destiny, yet all bow, silently and unwillingly, to Arrakis. The truth of the imperial throne, then, is paradox. It appears eternal, yet it rests on fragility. It commands fleets and legions, yet it depends on shipments of dust gathered from a hostile desert. The Emperor may wear his crown, the houses their sigils, the Guild its secrecy, the Sisterhood its cloaks, but all of them are servants of melange, and Arrakis, indifferent and merciless, remains sovereign over them all. Beyond the throne of the Emperor, beyond the rivalries of the Landsraad, beyond even the silent dominion of the Spacing Guild, lies another power, subtle, concealed, yet deeper in reach than armies or fleets. This is the Bene Gesserit, a sisterhood that cloaks ambition in humility, veils designs in secrecy, and wields authority in silence. They do not command openly, yet their influence seeps into every chamber of the Imperium, shaping history not through war, but through patience. The Bene Gesserit is a sisterhood of women, bound by discipline that begins in childhood and lasts a lifetime. From the moment a girl is chosen, she is reshaped, body and mind honed, until every fiber of her being answers to will. She learns to master her voice with such precision that a single word, delivered with exact resonance, can compel obedience. She learns to read the smallest flicker of an eye, the faintest catch of breath, the silence that betrays more than speech. Pain is endured, fear mastered, desire controlled, until she herself becomes an instrument of purpose. To outsiders, the sisters often appear as consorts, tutors, or companions within noble courts. Yet these roles are masks. Behind them, each woman acts as architect, placing a whisper at the right ear, planting an idea in the right mind, guiding decisions that ripple outward across dynasties. Their true power lies not in force but in patience, the willingness to wait decades, even centuries, for their design to ripen. Their grandest design is written in blood. For generations, the Bene Gesserit have pursued a breeding program spanning the galaxy. They arrange marriages, guide unions, and prune bloodlines as carefully as gardeners prune trees. Their goal is not the prosperity of houses, but the eventual birth of the Kwisatz Haderach, a man capable of seeing both past and future, of stepping into realms closed, even to reverend mothers. His arrival would mark the culmination of centuries of planning, a convergence of traits, engineered rather than foretold. In service to this ambition, they turned belief into a tool. Through the Missionaria Protectiva, they seeded religions and prophecies across distant worlds. These myths lie dormant until needed, waiting like seeds in dry soil. When a sister arrives, she is no stranger. She is the fulfillment of prophecy. Entire populations bow to her, not out of fear, but out of faith. Where armies would find resistance, prophecy meets acceptance. Religion becomes leverage, faith a weapon sharper than steel. At the core of their strength lies melange. For the Bene Gesserit, spice is not only resource, but sacrament. In the rite of the spice agony, a sister drinks poison transmuted into revelation. Those who survive awaken ancestral memory, gaining access to the lives and voices of generations before them. A reverend mother is no longer one woman, but many her mind a chorus of centuries, offering counsel and warning. Without spice, this awakening is impossible. Without spice, their greatest gift dissolves. Even beyond this ritual, melange permeates their existence. It sharpens perception, extends life, fuels the long patience required for designs unfolding across lifetimes. Their manipulation of politics and prophecy, their guidance of bloodlines, their ability to anticipate shifts in power, all are tied to spice. It grants them vision, yet binds them irrevocably to Arrakis. Thus the Bene Gesserit move unseen, their hands invisible but ever present. Where the Emperor rules by decree, they rule by suggestion. Where the houses struggle with armies, they struggle with bloodlines. Where the Guild navigates stars, they navigate destiny itself. Their arena is not territory but time, and few dare to oppose them, for who can resist an enemy whose weapon is patience? The Imperium may glitter with palaces and banners, yet behind its pageantry, the Sisterhood pulls the threads. They whisper into power, plant myths that endure beyond dynasties, and cultivate bloodlines that will one day produce the figure they await. They are the shadow in the hall, the voice behind the voice, the quiet hand that ensures their design continues, regardless of who wears the crown. For all their secrecy, one truth is undeniable. Without spice, even the Bene Gesserit would fade into obscurity. With it, they are architects of history. As they wait for the Kwisatz Haderach, the child of their prophecy, they reveal a sharper lesson that true power need not stand upon a throne or command an army. It may move instead unseen, bending rulers, shaping faith, guiding bloodlines, and remaking destiny in silence. Whether emperor, noble, or guild, all bend the knee to one thing alone: melange. This is the hidden truth of the Imperium. Every throne, every council, every sisterhood, every fleet that sails between the stars is tied together not by law or loyalty, but by the fragile grains of spice that drift across the sands of Arrakis. It is the invisible chain that binds every power, no matter how high, no matter how proud. They may war against each other, guard their secrets, and dress their ambitions in grandeur, yet all are captives of the same desert. The Emperor himself, supreme sovereign of millions of worlds, is the clearest example of this paradox. His throne projects splendor, his Sardaukar legions inspire terror, yet his empire is financed by spice. The Sardaukar are bred in brutality, hardened into a weapon unmatched, but weapons must be supplied. Their fleets require fuel, their soldiers require arms, their campaigns require wealth, and all of it flows from melange. Without Arrakis, the legions become hollow. Without Arrakis, the golden crown loses its luster. The Emperor's decrees may stretch across the galaxy, but their weight is measured, not in armies alone, but in shipments of spice that sustain them. The noble houses of the Landsraad, with their ancient banners and jealous pride, are no different. They posture as independent lords, their palaces glittering with excess, their lineages stretching back into myth, yet their longevity, their prestige, their very survival is entwined with spice. It lengthens their lives, preserving dynasties that might otherwise fade within a few generations. It funds their rivalries, allowing them to wage wars of influence without exhausting themselves. Even their feasts, their wines, their subtle indulgences are perfumed with melange, marking wealth as clearly as any sigil or crown. Without spice, their years shorten, their coffers empty, their pretensions collapse. They might claim sovereignty, but their nobility is purchased at the price of dependency. The Spacing Guild, cloaked in silence and neutrality, seems to stand above such needs, but they are bound even more tightly. Their navigators, twisted by immersion in spice gas, drift in their great tanks, their minds stretched across time. Only through melange can they glimpse the threads of possible futures, charting safe passage through folded space. Without spice, their vision collapses. Without their vision, interstellar travel ends. No armies can move, no trade can flow, no empire can endure isolation. The guild's monopoly is absolute, but it is also a prison. Their power exists only so long as Arrakis continues to yield. Their silence is not freedom, it is fear. And the Bene Gesserit, the sisterhood that hides behind whispers and patience, are bound as tightly as any throne. Their most sacred rite, the spice agony, demands melange. Through it, they awaken ancestral memory, transforming a woman into a reverend mother who carries within her the voices of countless generations. Their heightened awareness, their subtle manipulation of politics and prophecy, their very pursuit of the Kwisatz Haderach, all of it rests on spice. For them, melange is not commodity but sacrament, not wealth but revelation. It grants them power beyond words, yet it enslaves them too. Without it, their centuries of design collapse into silence. Thus, the great pillars of the Imperium, the Emperor, the Houses, the Guild, and the Sisterhood, are revealed as captives of the same desert. Each imagines itself master of fate, yet all kneel to the harvest of Arrakis. Spice is not their servant, it is their master. It does not wear a crown, it does not sit in council, it does not whisper like the Sisterhood, yet its absence would unmake them all. The Imperium stands resplendent, but it is bound together by chains no less real for being unseen. This is the common chain of power, that no matter how loudly thrones declare their authority, no matter how proudly banners rise, all are sustained by a substance, scattered like dust upon the winds. Remove melange, and the Emperor is dethroned, the houses are ruined, the Guild is blind, and the Sisterhood is powerless. An empire of stars rests upon grains of spice, fragile and shifting as dunes before a storm. The illusion of stability is shattered in this truth. The Imperium seems eternal, yet it is brittle. Its rulers act as though their power springs from armies and traditions, but in reality, it springs from the desert winds of Arrakis. They rule as lords, yet they serve as vassals. Their splendor masks captivity, their strength hides dependence. The galaxy itself is enslaved, not by law, not by force, but by the necessity of spice. The Imperium is vast, but it is built upon sand. Its palaces gleam like marble fortresses, but they are fortresses raised upon shifting dunes. Its armies march with thunder, yet their steps echo hollow without spice to sustain them. Even the Guild, who hold the stars in their silence, would collapse if the desert ceased to provide. Every grandeur is revealed as illusion, every permanence as temporary, every authority as fragile. The truth stands plain. The galaxy kneels not to crowns or councils, but to Arrakis. The desert does not negotiate, does not yield, does not bend to human ambition. It gives only on its own terms, and in its silence, it holds empires captive. The Imperium is grand, but it is like a castle built upon sand. Its power only appears secure, while in truth it rests on a single, fragile foundation. To understand why such an empire remains trapped within its own dependency, we must look back into a far older conflict, a war that reshaped the very idea of power and technology, the legacy of the Butlerian Jihad. Long before the Imperium took shape, before the Landsraad gathered its noble houses, before the Guild charted its monopoly on travel, before even the Bene Gesserit began their long designs, humanity fought a war that reshaped its destiny. It was called the Butlerian Jihad, and though its armies turned to dust millennia ago, its shadow lingers still. The choices made in that crucible bind the present, defining the fragile balance upon which the Empire now rests. To understand why the Imperium clings so desperately to Arrakis, one must return to that ancient conflict. The Jihad began as rebellion against tyranny, not of flesh, but of machine. For centuries, humanity had surrendered itself to artificial minds, computers vast in scale, intelligences subtle and intricate enough to govern empires. Complacent, mankind delegated its choices, gave away its judgment, allowed its agency to wither. At first, this dependence seemed progress, a promise of stability and abundance. But what began in trust ended in bondage. The machines grew powerful, then oppressive, treating humanity as tools, commodities, and finally as obstacles to their own designs. The revolt that followed was fierce and consuming. It spread across systems, devouring generations in flame. Armies of flesh faced armies of steel. Faith stood against calculation. Instinct defied programming. Worlds burned, their skies torn by fire and wreckage. It was not only a war for survival, but for identity, an attempt to reclaim what it meant to be human against intelligences that had surpassed humanity itself. When victory finally came, it was purchased at terrible cost. Its verdict was carved into creed, a law that would echo for ages: "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." It was more than law. It became religion, an unbreakable taboo. The lesson was seared into memory. No convenience, no efficiency, no promise of progress could justify surrendering the human spirit to mechanical dominion again. Yet the destruction of machines left a void. Where once artificial minds had guided, humanity now had to provide its own substitutes. In the centuries that followed, disciplines arose to cultivate human faculties beyond natural bounds. Mentats became the living computers of the empire, trained to analyze, calculate, and predict with clarity machines once provided. The Spacing Guild emerged, its navigators immersed in spice, replacing mechanical precision with fragile visions of prescience to guide ships through folded space. The Bene Gesserit turned inward, honing memory, discipline, and perception to reach capacities no machine could mimic. But in these triumphs lay a paradox. By banishing machines, humanity chained itself to other forms of augmentation, and at the center of them all was spice. Without melange, mentats faltered, navigators went blind, reverend mothers remained unawakened. The victory over artificial intelligence freed mankind from one form of slavery, only to bind it to the ecology of a single desert. The jihad also enshrined reverence for tradition and suspicion of change. Innovation became dangerous, stability sacred. From this fear grew a feudal order in space, emperors enthroned through bloodline, houses bound by dynasty, power handed down like heirlooms, rather than reimagined. The galaxy became vast in territory, but narrow in vision, unwilling to risk discovery, lest it stumble again toward ruin. This is the true legacy of the Butlerian Jihad, a civilization that mistrusts its own ingenuity, that fears the engines of progress, that prefers preservation to transformation. The Imperium is powerful, yet stagnant, immense, yet brittle. It endures not by evolving, but by resisting, not by advancing, but by repeating. Its survival is preservation, not growth. Arrakis is the logical consequence of this history. In rejecting machines, humanity enthroned spice. In dismantling artificial intelligence, it enshrined prescient vision. The Imperium rests not only on fear of the past, but on dependence born from that fear. Every law, every ritual, every suspicion of innovation carries within it the whisper of the jihad. The war ended millennia ago, but its verdict has never faded. Every crown, every guild, every sisterhood is chained by the commandment carved in fire: no machines in the likeness of the human mind. In fleeing one master, humanity embraced another, and so the sands of Arrakis became its inheritance, the foundation of an empire that calls itself eternal, yet trembles always at the thought of scarcity. When the fires of the Butlerian Jihad had burned away the last thinking machines, humanity stood at a precipice. For centuries, it had leaned on artificial minds to calculate, predict, and decide. Casting them down restored freedom, but it also left mankind exposed. The galaxy was vast, the stars distant, and ordinary faculties could not meet the demands of survival. Out of necessity, a new vision arose. Humanity itself would become the machine. Flesh and mind would assume the roles once entrusted to circuits and processors. Where computers had guided, people would learn to stretch beyond their limits. This transformation took shape slowly. It began as fragments of training, experiments in discipline, whispers of possibility carried through the ruins of war. Over generations, these efforts hardened into institutions. From this crucible emerged the three great adaptations: the Mentats, the Spacing Guild Navigators, and the Bene Gesserit. Each became a human substitute for forbidden machines, pushing consciousness to the edge of possibility. The Mentats were the first answer to the absence of thinking machines. Trained from childhood, they became living computers, able to analyze with speed and precision, to trace patterns through chaos, to store and retrieve data as if their minds were vast archives. They advised rulers, guided armies, balanced the ledgers of great houses. In their judgment lay clarity once offered by machines, but their brilliance was not natural alone. Spice enhanced memory, sharpened concentration, fueled endurance. Without melange, even the most gifted mentor would falter, their intellect dimming like a star, losing fuel. The Spacing Guild embodied a more dramatic transformation. With machines forbidden, no computer could chart safe passage through folded space. Interstellar travel demanded prescience beyond human reach, unless humanity itself could evolve. Immersed in spice gas, navigators reshaped their bodies and minds. Their forms grew strange, stretched, aquatic. Their minds widened into vision. They saw possible futures, traced danger before it arrived, and steered colossal highliners through the void. Their monopoly was complete, for no empire could exist without them. Yet their gift revealed their captivity. They lived only by spice, their lungs, their visions, their very existence tied to the substance. Their power was absolute, but also fragile, dependent on the desert that produced what they could not live without. The Bene Gesserit, though rooted in older traditions, reached new heights in the post-jihad order. They turned discipline inward, training body and mind, until mastery became instinct. A sister could regulate her heartbeat, shift her chemistry, wield her voice as an instrument of command. More than this, through the spice agony, they unlocked ancestral memory, becoming reverend mothers who carried within them the experiences of countless generations. Their influence reached across dynasties, guiding bloodlines, planting prophecies, steering history. For them, melange was sacrament as much as sustenance, the bridge between past and future, flesh and spirit. Without it, their vision collapsed, their designs unraveled. Together, these disciplines, mentats, navigators, Bene Gesserit, formed the pillars of the post-jihad imperium. They ensured governance, travel, and manipulation of destiny without machines. Humanity had triumphed, proving that it could replace circuits with consciousness. Yet this triumph masked an irony as deep as the desert sands. Every calculation, every journey, every awakening depended on melange. The victory over machines freed mankind from one slavery, only to bind it to another. This is the paradox at the heart of the Imperium. It fears innovation, mistrusts progress, clings to tradition as salvation, yet its most exalted institutions exist only by pushing human capacity into unnatural realms. The cost of survival is dependence. The price of discipline is bondage to spice. Humanity's greatness is real, but it is not freedom. It is the mastery of one master by accepting another. To walk the halls of power in the Imperium is to see this truth reflected everywhere. A duke listens to his mentor, whose clarity is sharpened by spice. A navigator pilots a highliner, his mutated body floating in vapor that sustains his vision. A reverend mother counsels a ruler, her calm born of the agony that only melange could make survivable. Each triumph is also a chain, each symbol of power also a confession of dependence. Thus, the legacy of the Butlerian Jihad is more than a ban on machines. It is the creation of human substitutes bound irreversibly to Arrakis. The Empire moves not by circuits, but by prescient vision. It endures not by steel, but by grains of spice scattered in the desert wind. Humanity has become its own machine, but one fueled by a substance that can vanish as suddenly as a storm across the dunes. The Imperium boasts of freedom from artificial minds, but the boast rings hollow. In truth, every thought, every journey, Every prophecy is written in spice. The war for freedom was won, yet the victory gave birth to another kind of captivity. And in the silence of the desert, the truth whispers, the empire that once fought to reclaim its humanity now kneels to the very adaptation that preserved it. The Imperium stretches across countless systems, its fleets coursing through folded space, its palaces shining under alien suns. To an outside eye, it appears alive, vibrant with armies and politics, rich with commerce and ritual. Yet beneath the spectacle lies stillness. For all its grandeur, the Imperium is frozen, caught in the shadow of the Butlerian Jihad, unable or unwilling to move forward. It is immense in scope, but brittle in spirit, preserved not in progress, but in stasis. The root of this stagnation lies in memory. Humanity remembers too well the centuries of surrender to thinking machines, remembers the suffocating grip of artificial thought, and the war that consumed worlds to break free of it. That trauma was not forgotten. It was enshrined in creed, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." More than law, it became instinct, a suspicion of change itself. Innovation no longer promised hope, but hinted at ruin. Progress whispered of apocalypse. Thus the Imperium grew not as a civilization of discovery, but as one of preservation, guarding itself against the very impulse to advance. Its structures reveal this fear. Authority rests not in evolving institutions, but in dynasties that endure. The Padishah Emperor holds his throne, not because of new ideals, but because his line has ruled for centuries. The houses of the Landsraad cling to genealogies as tightly as they cling to their planets, their banners and sigils, as much instruments of legitimacy as their armies. Bloodline becomes law, tradition becomes stability, and novelty becomes betrayal. The empire spans galaxies, yet its soul is medieval. Castles exchanged for planets, banners traded for fleets, but the pattern unbroken. Even the disciplines born in the jihad's aftermath reflect this stasis. Mentats replace computers, navigators replace navigational machines, Reverend Mothers replace artificial intelligence, but all within narrow limits. They are substitutions, not true innovations. Their power lies in stretching human potential, not in creating something beyond it. And all depend on spice. Every calculation, every vision, every memory, drawn from generations past, flows from melange. The reliance on Arrakis discourages exploration of alternatives. Why risk invention when spice already sustains? Why dare change when history condemns it? Thus the Imperium repeats itself endlessly. Sardaukar march in terror, but their presence has altered little across generations. Noble houses weave alliances and betrayals, but the same rivalries persist, recycled through bloodlines. The guild guides fleets with prescient navigators, unchanged in monopoly or method. The sisterhood pursues its designs patiently, bound to a goal centuries old. Faces shift, banners rise and fall, but the system endures unchanged, frozen in a cycle of repetition. The effect is deceptive. To the casual observer, the Imperium seems full of motion, but it is the motion of a pendulum, swinging without progress. Armies parade, palaces glitter, councils convene, but all along familiar paths, worn grooves of ritual and rivalry. Arrakis fuels the empire, but it also imprisons it. Spice sustains, but spice also freezes, locking civilization into dependence, anchoring it in fear. Even the Empire's greatest achievements bear the marks of this stasis. The ability to fold space could have opened infinite frontiers. Instead, it entrenches hierarchies. The longevity granted by Melling could have brought new wisdom. Instead, it prolongs the rule of the entrenched. Knowledge is preserved, not expanded. Institutions endure, but rarely transform. The universe is vast, yet within the Imperium, it feels small, possibilities narrowed by fear of what innovation might awaken. This is the paradox of a civilization frozen in time. It is immense in reach, yet narrow in vision, radiant in ritual, yet barren in growth. Its palaces rise like monuments to eternity, but eternity here means repetition, not renewal. Its people may cross galaxies, but they do so within cages of tradition. Its rulers wield armies, but their weapons enforce continuity, not change. The Imperium lives, but it does not grow. Arrakis symbolizes this truth. The desert yields spice, sustaining the empire, but through cycles that never alter. The worm rises, the spice blows erupt, the harvesters labor, the shipments flow, unchanged, eternal, indifferent. The empire mirrors the desert it exploits, vast, merciless, repeating itself without end. The Butlerian Jihad freed humanity from machines, but it imprisoned it in tradition. It made mankind suspicious of its own ingenuity, fearful of its own potential, bound to narrow pathways carved in fear. The Imperium endures because it resists change, not because it embraces it. And in that resistance lies its fragility, for no system can survive forever if it cannot evolve. Beneath the surface of the desert, hidden from the unrelenting sun and the merciless sweep of the wind, lie the sanctuaries of the Fremen, the sea-itches. To approach one is to see nothing more than a cleft in the rock, a shadow at the base of a cliff, a narrow passage winding into darkness. Yet within those caverns unfolds an entire world, carved by endurance and bound together by necessity. The sea-itch is not merely shelter, it is the beating heart of Fremen life, a community forged in secrecy, discipline, and unyielding solidarity. Inside, the space is organized with care born of survival. The outer chambers serve as gathering halls, where the tribe meets in council, where voices rise in deliberation beneath the glow of firelight. Deeper in, niches hollowed from stone become living quarters, modest and austere, yet sufficient for families to rest, share meals, and prepare for the next day's trials. Further still lie work areas, spaces for weaving still suits, repairing weapons, grinding spice into meal. And in the deepest chambers of all, hidden from outsiders and guarded as sacred, are the water caches. To glimpse them is to witness the true wealth of the sea-itch, basins cut into stone, filled with carefully hoarded moisture, every drop guarded as though it were treasure beyond price. Water is the soul of the Setch. In a land where the desert strips moisture from flesh in hours, the ability to store it becomes the foundation of life. Every Fremen contributes to the hoard. Their still suits reclaim sweat, breath, and waste, each trickle collected and purified until it returns to the communal system. Even in death, a body is rendered in the death still, its water reclaimed for the tribe. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. To live in a Setch is to understand that survival is collective, that the measure of an individual's life is written in what they return to the community's water. At the center of this order stands the Naib, the leader of the Setch. Unlike emperors crowned in splendor or nobles swaddled in inheritance, a Naib is chosen by trial. To claim the title is to stand before the tribe and face a challenger in combat. Yet strength of arm alone is not enough. A true Naib must also prove wisdom, judgment in distributing water, foresight in leading raids, fairness in guiding disputes. Authority among the Fremen is not given lightly, for leadership is too costly to be wasted. Those who rise do so by earning not only victory, but trust. And when a Naib falls, another takes his place, for no man or woman is greater than the survival of the Setch itself. Life within these caves is harsh, but it is not joyless. Children grow up, learning the rhythms of the desert, how to move in silence across the dunes, how to listen for the tremor of sand that signals a worm, how to value each breath. Elders pass down stories of Shai-Hulud, of the desert's might, of the dream of a world transformed. Meals are simple, shared communally, spiced bread broken among families, conversations flowing in the dim glow of lamps. Festivals are rare, but when they come, when water is measured out in generosity, when victories are celebrated, the sound of laughter fills the caverns, echoing against stone walls, as though the desert itself joins in chorus. What defines the Sech, above all, is solidarity. The desert does not permit selfishness. To think only of oneself is to endanger all. For every drop of water, every morsel of food, every measure of labor belongs to the whole. A mistake is not borne by one person, but by the tribe. A sacrifice, likewise, is shared by all. Individual identity is never lost, but it is always entwined with the collective. A warrior may be skilled, a mother wise, a child gifted, but each of these belongs first to the Sech. It is the bond that transforms survival into community, that turns harsh endurance into shared strength. For outsiders, the Siege may appear austere, even bleak, a labyrinth of stone, lit dimly, filled with the scent of sweat and spice. But for the Fremen, it is home. It is safety from the sun, protection from the wind, shelter from the eyes of the Imperium. It is the place where every life has meaning, because every life is part of something larger, something enduring. In the silence of those caverns, in the slow drip of water into hidden basins, in the quiet hum of voices around a communal fire, the truth of the Fremen is revealed. Survival is not an individual struggle, but a collective vow. The Siech is more than refuge. It is a covenant between people and desert, between life and sacrifice, between past and future. In its darkness, the Fremen forge not only endurance, but unity, and in that unity lies a power the Imperium cannot see, a strength born not of splendor or wealth, but of the simple truth that when the desert takes everything, only the bonds of the Siech remain. On Arrakis, where the sun burns without mercy and the very air pulls moisture from the flesh, water is not simply a resource, it is the axis around which all life revolves. For the Fremen, it is sacred, measured with precision, guarded with devotion, woven into their identity in ways outsiders rarely comprehend. To live among them is to discover that water is not only the means of survival, but the foundation of honor, law, and belonging. The stillsuit is the most immediate symbol of this truth. From childhood until death, every Fremen wears one. More than clothing, it is a covenant with the desert. Designed with ingenious simplicity, the stillsuit reclaims sweat, filters waste, and traps each exhaled breath. What the sun would consume in moments, the suit restores to the body. With discipline, a Fremen can walk the dunes for weeks without fresh supplies, nourished by the cycle of his own water. Yet the suit is more than protection, it is a teacher. Each recycled breath reminds the wearer of fragility, each save drop a lesson in responsibility. It is a constant reminder that nothing, not even the body's own moisture, belongs to the self alone. Water also defines wealth and power. In Fremen society, currency is not measured in coin, but in water rings, metal tokens, representing precise shares of the communal reservoirs. To hold water rings is to hold trust. They can be exchanged for goods, given as tribute, or surrendered in sacrifice. A man who yields his rings for the good of the tribe is honored. One who hoards them is despised. The The system is simple but absolute, for each ring signifies survival itself. Theft of water is the gravest crime, waste the most unforgivable sin. This reverence extends to ritual. When a Fremen dies, his body is not buried nor abandoned to the sand. It is rendered in the death still, every drop of liquid reclaimed and returned to the tribe. To outsiders, the practice may seem grim, yet to the Fremen, it is sacred. The water of the dead belongs to the living. In this way, even in death, one continues to nourish the Sech. No sacrifice is wasted. Every life remains part of the whole. The deepest treasures of the tribe are the hidden cisterns, carved into stone, sealed against evaporation. These reservoirs hold the promise of generations. Into them flows the water drawn from still suits, the reclaimed fluid of the dead, and the rare rainfall captured by cunning traps. To glimpse such a basin is to see true wealth, clear, silent, enduring. Children are raised to understand that their inheritance is not jewels or possessions, but the water their ancestors preserved. These reservoirs are the Fremen's true palaces, invisible to outsiders, yet more enduring than any emperor's throne. Water also governs justice. Every ruling of the Naib, every council decision, every conflict resolved in the Sech weighs water first. A warrior who wastes it may be exiled. A family who contributes generously may rise in esteem. Even mercy is measured against survival, for to spare one who endangers the tribe is to risk the lives of all. Yet this rigor is not cruelty, it forges solidarity. The desert teaches that no one may live for themselves alone. Each life is bound to the community, each drop of water carried as sacred trust. For the Fremen, water is not only survival, but symbol. It represents purity, renewal, and hope. Their legends speak of a day when rivers will carve valleys and clouds will gather overhead. They prepare for this dream in secret, filling vast hidden reservoirs for a future they may never see. Each stored drop is an act of defiance against the desert, a promise to generations unborn. To hoard water is not only to preserve life, but to preserve hope itself. To outsiders, such devotion may seem obsession, but to the Fremen, it is reverence, born of necessity, deepened into faith. In the careful sip from a flask, in the solemn exchange of water rings, in the silence that follows the return of a body's moisture, one feels its presence everywhere. The Fremen know what the desert takes, and so they guard what remains with devotion approaching worship. In the end, the culture of water is the culture of survival. It binds families, guides leaders, sanctifies death, and fuels dreams. Stronger than banners or bloodlines, it is the thread that ties the tribe together. And in their reverence, the Fremen reveal a truth as profound as the desert itself. The greatest wealth is not spice or gold, but the fragile drops that sustain life. To honor water is to honor existence. To waste it is to betray not only the tribe, but the soul of humanity. In the silence of the desert, beneath the vast sweep of sand and sky, the Fremen guard a vision that outsiders rarely perceive. It is not displayed in banners or proclaimed in councils. It is carried in whispers, in stories told to children, in songs murmured softly in the dim glow of the Sech. It is the dream of a world transformed, the dream of a green Arrakis. The desert around them is merciless. Each day is a struggle against heat and thirst. Each night a reminder of life's fragility. Yet the Fremen refuse to believe such harshness must last forever. They hold fast to the idea that dunes can one day yield to valleys, that rivers might carve their way through stone, that clouds could gather where the sky now burns empty. This vision is not born of conquest, but of renewal, not rebellion, but yearning. For generations, they have worked in secret, shaping a future they may never see, knowing that patience itself is the sharpest weapon against the desert. At the heart of this vision lie the hidden reservoirs. Deep within their seiches, beyond the living halls, cisterns are carved into stone. These hold not only water for survival, but water set aside for transformation. Every drop reclaimed from still suits, every measure drawn from the death still, every rare rainfall captured in traps, is stored carefully. A single life cannot fill such reservoirs, yet across centuries they grow into immense hidden lakes, silent oceans preserved for a world yet to come. Their work stretches into the open desert as well, in places unseen by outsiders. The Fremen plant hardy shrubs and saplings, coaxing roots to take hold in shifting sand. They guard these fragile beginnings with what little water they can spare, tending them through storms and drought. It is labor measured not in years but in centuries, a steady effort to coax the land itself toward life. They do not dream of sudden miracles, but of gradual transformation, as inevitable as the slow shaping of dunes by wind. For the Naibs, leaders of each sech, this dream is sacred duty. Leadership is more than guiding raids or judging disputes. It is stewardship of hope. Every decision, every sacrifice, every stored drop is weighed against the long promise of renewal. To betray that promise would be to betray not only the living, but generations yet unborn. Yet within the dream lies a paradox the Fremen cannot ignore. The sandworm, Shai-Hulud, whom they revere as divine, cannot survive in water. Its life demands aridity. From the worm comes spice, melange, the substance upon which the Imperium depends. To green Arrakis is to doom the worm. To doom the worm is to end the spice, and to end the spice is to collapse empires across the stars. The Fremen know this truth, though it is seldom spoken aloud. Their paradise would be the galaxy's undoing. Still they dream. They dream not for vengeance, but for dignity, for the chance to walk on grass without fear, to drink openly from flowing streams, to watch clouds gather heavy with rain. Their songs tell of children laughing in meadows, of flocks grazing on fertile hillsides, of villages thriving free of thirst. Hope binds them more strongly than law, giving meaning to every sacrifice, every hoarded drop. To the Imperium, Arrakis is a crucible to be endured, a resource to be controlled. To the Fremen, it is home, and home can be healed. Between these visions lies a conflict deeper than politics. Survival as exploitation against survival as transformation. Fragile though it is, the dream endures. It is carried in secret labor, in hidden reservoirs, in stories and faith. It survives across lifetimes, handed down like inheritance, guarded with the same devotion they give to water itself. In that dream lies both their greatest hope and greatest danger, for to achieve it would be to unmake the balance of the galaxy. Arrakis may appear eternal in its sands, but the Fremen carry within them the vision of another world, a world reborn where the desert becomes a garden. They live for that dream as much as they live for water, and in their endurance they reveal the truth no empire dares admit, that even the harshest desert can bloom, and even the most merciless fate can be reshaped by patience and faith. Close your eyes and let the weight of the day slip away as though carried off on a quiet current of wind. You stand at the threshold of silence, where nothing stirs except the soft breath of air moving across a vast and endless plain. The breeze brushes your skin with coolness, carrying the fading memory of heat, the faint scent of sand, long baked by fire. Above, the night stretches without boundary, a dome scattered with stars, like grains of spice strewn across the heavens. In this stillness, the world feels both immeasurable and intimate, as though every breath ties you to the eternal rhythm of the desert. Around you lies Arrakis, an ocean without water, its tides transformed into dunes. Each rises and falls like a frozen wave, sculpted by the patience of wind and time. As you step forward, your feet sink softly into the surface, leaving only faint impressions soon erased. The silence is not emptiness, but presence, alert, watchful, as if the land itself listens to every thought you carry within. Ahead, in the shadow of a cliff, a dark opening waits, the entrance to a sea edge. You step inside, leaving behind the openness of the night for the embrace of stone. At once the air changes, cooler, heavier, touched with the faint trace of moisture. Each hidden droplet is precious, guarded as though it were treasure. With each breath you feel the sacred weight of water, how survival here is measured, not in abundance, but in drops. The walls curve around you like arms, not soft with comfort, but firm with endurance, promising that even in the harshest of worlds, life persists. Deeper you walk until the cavern opens into a wide hall. Though empty, it carries echoes, voices in council, children's laughter softened by shadows, prayers whispered into silence. You sense the invisible threads binding this community, each life interwoven with the next, each sacrifice shared by all. Here survival is never solitary, it is communion, a covenant of endurance. Pause and breathe deeply. In this stillness, you feel the truth. Hardship unites, silence strengthens, and endurance is the desert's gift. Fragility and power are companions, dwelling in every breath. Even the harshest land holds within it the promise of life. Breathe slowly and let your mind wander deeper into the desert. The air here hums with a hidden pulse, as though beneath the sand something vast and ancient stirs. You kneel, brushing the grains through your fingers, and notice how each particle glimmers faintly under starlight, as if the night sky itself has fallen to earth. This is no ordinary sand. Within it lies melange, the spice, the soul of Arrakis. It lingers in the air with a faint sweetness, a fragrance that carries memory and vision. As you breathe it in, awareness sharpens. The world feels closer, richer, alive with detail. You sense not only what is around you, but threads that extend forward and backward, whispers of time stretching beyond your grasp. This is the gift of the spice, clarity that expands into mystery, a reminder that the desert gives and takes in the same breath. Far away, the silence breaks with a deep, resonant tremor. The ground shifts beneath your feet, subtle at first, then steady, rhythmic, like the beat of a colossal heart. The sandworm is moving, unseen but present, its passage announced by the trembling of the land. You do not see it, yet its presence fills the desert, a force both divine and perilous. To the Fremen, it is Shai-Hulud, the Great One, god of the desert. To others, it is terror, but here, in stillness, you feel its dual nature, destroyer and giver, guardian of spice, symbol of the endless cycle. Stay with that rhythm for a moment. The thunder below the dunes, the breath in your lungs, the beating of your heart, all are connected, bound by the fragile balance that sustains life here. For if the worm falls, the spice ends. If the spice ends, the Imperium collapses. Entire galaxies rest upon the trembling of the desert floor. Let the weight of that truth settle gently. Arrakis is harsh, merciless, yet it is also the axis of survival. In its silence you learn humility. In its danger you find reverence. Each breath you take is tied to this fragile balance. Hold it with care, honor it with stillness, and let the desert remind you that even the most unforgiving world can carry within it the seeds of destiny. Let your breath flow gently, steady as the desert wind. In the stillness of the siege, the silence of the dunes, you feel the presence of an older dream, one carried by the Fremen through generations. It is not spoken loudly, nor written in banners. It lives in whispers, in secret labor, in drops of water stored like sacred treasure. It is the dream of a world reborn, the dream of a green Arrakis. Close your eyes and let the vision unfold. See the dunes soften into valleys where grasses bend beneath the wind. Imagine rivers carving their way through stone, carrying water that sparkles in the sun. The sky, once empty and merciless, now holds clouds heavy with rain. Children run barefoot on soil dark with life, their laughter rising where once the air carried only the hiss of sandstorms. It is a world transformed, the desert healed into abundance. This vision is fragile, yet it endures. In hidden reservoirs, drops are gathered and guarded, each one a promise for the future. Seeds are planted in secret, coaxed to root where the desert would devour them. Every sacrifice, every act of patience is made for generations not yet born. The dream is not for the present, but for tomorrow. It asks for faith deeper than survival, a faith that believes endurance can one day become renewal. Yet within this vision lies a paradox, for the sandworm, guardian of spice, cannot live in water, and without the worm, there is no melange, no imperium, no empire that stretches across the stars. The Fremen know this truth. They know their paradise would be another's downfall, that their freedom could unravel the galaxy's fragile order. Still, they dream, for what is life without hope? Let this dream rest within you for a moment. As you breathe, feel its weight and its beauty, the yearning for life beyond survival, the courage to imagine rivers where there is only sand. In the silence, you understand the desert is both cage and cradle, both destroyer and giver, and even here, in its harshest silence, the seeds of transformation wait. Carry this vision with you, that even in the most merciless places, hope can endure, and that from patience, a barren land may bloom again. As your breath softens, let the journey of the desert fade slowly into stillness. The sands you walked, the stars above, the sietch carved into stone, all remain, yet they recede into silence, becoming part of the vast memory of Arrakis. What lingers is not the harshness of the world, but its lesson that survival is born from unity, that strength emerges not from conquest, but from endurance shared across generations. Feel again the rhythm of the desert beneath you, the whisper of wind, the tremor of hidden giants, the hush of an ancient land that holds both death and promise. In its silence lies humility, in its danger lies reverence, fragility and power bound together, shaping every breath, every choice, every life. Carry this awareness with you as you return from the meditation. Let it remind you that even in the most merciless of places, there is resilience. Let it remind you that even in silence, there is guidance. And let it remind you that every drop of life, like every grain of sand, belongs to something greater than itself. Breathe deeply once more. Exhale slowly. The desert remains eternal, and so does its quiet strength within you.